So land is really interesting to me. We actually live on 45 acres, and we've been talking about like developing part of it for short-term rentals and stuff, but it's gotten me a lot more interested in land. So the biggest thing I think that is a hurdle for a lot of people when it comes to land investing is, you talked about if you could buy something at a fraction of what it's worth, but the value, like when I want to know a value of a house, I look at the comps all around it and I feel like I get a better sense of value. Value feels very subjective to me when it comes to land. How do you identify that to know that you're buying something at a fraction of what you can sell it for?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head, man. It's very subjective. And there are times when it's less subjective, when you can get a lot more clarity on it. But when you look at how an appraisal is done for a house, it's much easier to appraise any kind of building than it is vacant land, because you've got the income approach, you've got the sales comparison approach, and the other one, the cost to rebuild. Three different ways you could look at it to determine what is this thing objectively worth. With land, there is no cost to rebuild because there's nothing there. And income approach, usually there's no income unless it's like farmland or something. And the only thing you have is the sales comparison approach. So looking at similar vacant lots and what those sold for recently. And if you're talking about like an infill lot, like one of 100 vacant lots in a subdivision, then you can probably find some comps for that because there's a cookie cutter comparable to work with. But I know in a lot of places in Indiana and a lot of places in Michigan, there are literally no comps for certain properties. Like there might be a 5-acre parcel on a hillside by water. Like there just isn't anything else like that nearby that recently sold, which leaves you to deal with a lot of imperfect information to try to figure out, okay, so what's the next best thing we could use? And, the next option might be find a property that isn't really a comp and maybe it's a different size and try to figure out, okay, well, if we take that and back into it over here, like it sort of gets you there, but not like a 100% certain answer. Or you could look at comps further away or go way back in time. And the further out you go, the less quality of a comp it is. And this whole reason right there is part of why most banks won't touch vacant land unless you have an immediate plan to improve it. That starts to change a little bit when it's vacant land, like over $150,000. They start looking at other things and your personal financial net worth and that kind of stuff. But like if you just wanted to go out and borrow $20,000 to buy a vacant lot, like there's a good chance most banks won't talk to you unless you have building plans to do something with it. So on one hand, like it kind of stinks. It does make things harder. But on the other hand, it's important to understand that the reason a lot of people buy vacant land is not because it makes logical sense. They do it because they're buying a dream. Like they want this idea that, yeah, I can park my RV there on the weekends, or I can build my cottage there someday when my grandkids will come visit me and all this stuff. And the reality is most of that's never going to happen. They just have a dream and they want to own land. I mean, I've sold landlocked properties to lots of people, not keeping any secret that it's landlocked. Like I say it in the listing, they know they can't get to the property. So it's essentially worthless. Like it might as well be on the moon, but people will still buy that stuff because it's almost like like a conversation topic or something. Like, yeah, I own land out in Idaho or something.
Yeah.
So again, like it doesn't make logical sense, but you can kind of see why some people do this. And in terms of what that thing is worth, I mean, there's lots of ways you can elevate the perceived value, and nobody can really tell you otherwise because there's no comps for it. And there's ways you can, get really good pictures of it and give lots of good information and paint a picture explaining why it's a great property. Again, not misleading people. You don't want to hide stuff from them. You're just telling them what it is, but you're doing it in its best possible light. And when you have that versus other property listings with terrible pictures or no pictures, it's not hard to look like the best property in the area. And it's just a matter of understanding. I mean, and also other ways that you can make it worth more. Like if there's no road access, get road access, like buy an easement from somebody. If the zoning isn't right, change the zoning. Like with your property, you could subdivide that. So there's lots of ways you can take a property that the acquisition price that you buy it at, it legitimately is not worth much. and you're making a discounted offer on that. But then once you own it, there's a lot of levers you can pull to increase the value, whether it's perceived or like verifiable based on its uses.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I can see. So it's like almost like marketing. It's kind of funny how similar that is to Airbnbs. It's a lot of it is how you market, especially with like these glamping sites and stuff like that. We went and stayed at a place called Fields of Michigan in Michigan, in your neck of the woods there, South Haven. And we stayed in a tent, and they charged $350 a night to stay in a canvas tent.
Really?
That's the response every single person says when I tell them the price tag to stay in a tent. But we would actually go back and do it again because the experience was amazing. I mean, you're in nature, but they've taken any struggle that comes with being in nature out of it. You have your own bathroom in the tent. Like, they pick you up on a gator and drive you to the tent and start your campfire for you and serve you this gourmet breakfast. Like, it was amazing. But it's marketed as this like exclusive, incredible experience, as opposed to right down the street, there's another site that charges barely $100 a night, exact same tent, but the pictures, everything about it is just totally different. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in what you're talking about in terms of just the way you position whatever it is that you have makes a lot of difference in terms of the value of it, or perceived value, I guess. So how are you getting the information when it comes to land research? Then it feels like that's a little bit harder than when it comes to sold houses.
Yeah, well, I guess it just depends which information you're referring to and what area it's in. Like if you're talking about, what was the past sales price, or what's the size of it, or what are the coordinates of it, or who's the current owner? Like a lot of that stuff is very easy to get. Is that what you meant, or did you mean something else?
Well, that on the property itself, but then also on the comps and sold lots and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure how you would normally do it, but like my first place that I would be going is a place like Zillow or Redfin, and just typing in, this is the zip code or the county or the general area, and I'm looking for only vacant lots. And we're going to look back maybe the past year or maybe the past 6 months to see, how many properties sold. If you can narrow it down by the size range, similar to the property that you're looking at, that's another way to do it. Even then, that still might not give you like plentiful data depending on the market, but that's one way to start. If you can't find any good sold comps, another way is to look at listed properties, and that's definitely not the same quality. People can ask whatever they want. Doesn't mean it's worth that. But if you have just nothing else to work with, that's another way to just figure out like, okay, what's my competition? Like if I have a similar property that I'm selling right now, who am I going up against? Who do I have to look better than in order to price my property either at the lowest or make my property look the best in terms of pictures? And you can even assign, like if you use the listed properties to come up with market values, you could then assign a discount on that. Like we're going to assume 20 or 30% cheaper than that. And that's what market value is. And again, totally imperfect. I'm not saying this is like a precise way to do it, but if you don't have any other information, like what are you going to do? Like that's kind of what you have to work with. And this uncertainty is what scares a lot of people out of the land business and keeps it less competitive. It also gives you a lot of opportunity when you come to sell your property. You don't have to do this, but one way to give yourself a competitive advantage and sell your properties for more and create some recurring income is to offer seller financing when you sell those properties. And seller financing, if you're willing to do it, it fits like a glove with the land business because of the whole financing issue, the fact that banks usually don't want to deal with these kind of properties.
And is that, well, I guess, how are you financing your properties when you buy them typically?
Well, the types of properties I go after currently, I'm just buying them cash.
Okay.
And it's, that's the thing. It's, if the value is there, the money is never going to be a problem. It's kind of like that example. Like if you had a $30,000 car for $5,000 or something, like you could probably find the money somewhere. I mean, if you're really getting that kind of value, and the price ranges that I go after currently, I don't need any external financing. But if you ever did, there's plenty of people out there who would happily do that for you. I mean, there's even like funding companies now that only do private money for vacant land like this now.
Mm.
So yeah, the money, it actually used to be a lot harder before all these people were offering this kind of money, but it's not that hard these days.